Chapter 3 of Ghost is entitled World Record for the Most Altercations, and we certainly encounter plenty of those in this chapter. Remember in Chapter 2, Coach tells Ghost's mother he will be off the team the first time he messes up, so she doesn't give him very little leeway. He certainly messes up in Chapter 3, where we learn a lot more about Castle's background. He begins by talking about rap sheets. Although he does not have a criminal record, Castle explains he has the school equivalent, a file, which he believes is rather large, and he's a pretty common fixture in the principal's office. Castle explains he winds up there because he has often been suspended for responding to people who talk smack about him. It's usually their fault, obviously. Why is your name Castle? Why do you always smell like you walked 1,000 miles to get here? Why does it look like someone tried to cut your hair with a butter knife? Once again, Castle displays that massive chip on his shoulder from his impoverished background that we talked about earlier. However, Castle tries to be on his best behavior in this chapter, or altercation-free, as he puts it. We hear the altercation a lot in this chapter. An altercation means a fight or a dispute. And Castle is altercation-free for 7 hours and 2 minutes, and he sees that as quite an achievement. Admittedly, he's asleep for most of that time. Castle says he always sleeps on a pallet on the floor. The fact he's not returned to his room since his father tried to shoot him is another indicator of his ongoing trauma, and that idea of his bed as a stressful place is a kind of symbol that runs through Ghost. At school, Ghost gets through social studies effortlessly, but he runs into trouble once he gets to the cafeteria. Brandon Simmons, the odious school bully, taunts him relentlessly. Castle resists, but it's only a matter of time before he loses his control. He explains he has a lot of scream inside. Brandon teases Castle about the area he knows he's weakness, his deprived neighborhood glass manor, which Brandon Simmons describes as shattered. Although Castle manages to hang on to his cool, he loses it when Brandon takes that nuclear option because he's not able to wind him up in any other way, and throws a chicken drumstick at Ghost, telling him, "It's my good deed for the day, feeding the hungry." Castle beams a chocolate milk container at Brandon's head and follows up by beating Brandon around the face. Inevitably, he's in Principal Marshall's office again, trying to turn the red inside back to black. He doesn't immediately think of the team, but then it hits him that he'll be off the team if he messes up. The principal obviously takes the incident with Ghost's father into consideration when he tells him he's been through some things and he's not going to give him a full suspension, which is pretty lenient when you think about what he did. But when the principal tells him to call his mother, Castle realizes his days on the team are going to be pretty much over before they've even started. Tellingly, Castle is already concerned about the team, which indicates Coach is having a positive influence on his life, and it's to Coach that he turns when he asks the principal to instead call his uncle, aka Coach. Of course, he's not his uncle. Coach is obviously surprised by this call, but he plays along, telling Castle, "Kid, you're already killing me." Coach picks up Castle at the school, but the teen can tell he's pretty unimpressed. He gives him the "I'm so disappointed in you" look, which is way worse than the "I'm so mad" look. Coach is mad as well, but he just calmed down. However, Castle is cynical about Coach lumping him in with the other adults in his life. What is it about adults that make them all say the same things, like they all studied the same book about grown-upness, memorizing phrases like, "Does that make it right?" and "Be the bigger person," Ghost says. It turns out Coach has a more effective strategy than just words. When he takes him to the track for practice, Castle said it was fine by him. However, Coach will end up running Castle ragged, as we find out in the next chapter. But this chapter ends with a discussion on fear. Ghost said he's not scared of Brandon. But when he says he has been scared by somebody before, he's obviously referencing his father with the gun. "I guess the only other person I'm scared of maybe is me," Ghost says. Seemingly describe that red or that scream inside that we talked about earlier on in this chapter. This chapter ends with one of the most important quotes in the novel, and it comes from Coach. "Trouble is, you can't run away from yourself. Unfortunately, ain't nobody that fast, Coach said. So always think about that, given the running theme and trying to get places. In other words, Coach is saying Ghost must come to terms with his issues rather than running away from them. While fighting might not look like running away, it's actually distraction from Castle dealing with his fears and his underlying issues and his negative emotions. Ultimately, Coach will help Castle overcome his issues through teamwork and dedication to a cause. Thank you for listening to this. I hope you can subscribe to the English Guy YouTube channel. Thank you.